Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Mark and Chris back with a special episode. Newcastle United may be on a break, but we're not, mate. We are back behind the mic, behind the screen, doing a bit of a half-term report on the Magpies and Eddie Howe. Half-term, we always used to hate these kind of things in school. Funny enough, the teachers used to say I talk too much and it wouldn't take me many places, but there you go. Never mind that, eh? How are you, mate? You all right?
What do they know, eh?
What do they know? Let's hope they subscribe. Good to see you. Click the button.
Oh, can you imagine? Dear me, we got off on a weird foot. Yeah, can you imagine? I can't see many of them doing.
No,
but no, I'm good. I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you?
To be fair, most of our teachers are probably too old to even work the computer, half of them, mate, to be honest with you. So, yeah, sadly, mate, yeah. A lot of them would be probably looking at sea views and care homes. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Newcastle United. We're going to get stuck right in a second. We are live tonight, guys, so please jump in the comments and let us know what you think. What we're going to do, basically, to give you a little bit of a rundown here, we're going to score the players in terms of how we think they performed this season out of 10. We're going to talk a little bit about why we've given those scores. And we're also going to score Eddie Howe. And if we've got time, mate, we'll talk a little bit about maybe what we need transfer-wise and bounce a few bits of banter off the guys in the chat as well. And just before we kick off, as we always say, if you are new to the channel, chatting for the first time, good evening to you. Smash that subscribe button. Come and join us. We're over 6,300 subs. Loads of room for you, Nevermore. It's a cracking little community here. We've got loads of great crack in the comments. I'm sure there'll be a few flying around tonight as well. And we'll get stuck in a minute, and I'm sure we'll cover all the basis, mate. So let's get stuck in then, Mark, with the player scores really then. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to go position by position. We're starting with goalkeeper. I'll give you my scores first, and then you give me yours. And then we're going to have a little chat about why we scored the goalkeepers out. So I'm going to go with Nick Pope for a goalkeeper for us. Obviously, the main goalkeeper for us, sadly injured. Big loss for us at the moment. I'm going to give Nick Pope 7 out of 10. What would you say to that, mate? What's your score for Pope?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree. There've been moments this season where he's not been at his sharp, at his best. He didn't start the season, I think, particularly well, but was growing into it just before he got injured. I think 7's a fair score. He's had a couple of mistakes. I know we touched on some of this before we came on, didn't we? And there've been a couple of mistakes. I think moments where passing wise, he's shown what he really is as a goalkeeper. I remember the early game against Manchester City where he passes 110 yards straight to a City player, that sort of thing. We know that's not his game. But yeah, he's done well. I mean, he looked shaky end of last season, and I think he's just started to find himself before that cruel injury.
Find himself very deep and meaningful, mate. Very deep and meaningful. Yeah, I mean, the reason I gave Pope 7 out of 10, to be honest, probably similar to what you've done as well, mate. In all fairness, I think Pope obviously was brilliant for us last season. You know, we ended the season with that thumb injury. Didn't look quite the same when he come back from that thumb injury. I thought he wasn't as commanding when he come out to catch. He was punching more than he was catching. He was looking a bit flappy at times. His distribution isn't great, and there was a few games I think where it really was highlighted. He was a bit hesitant off his line. He just looked a bit wobbly, but sadly, as you say as well, just he started to come back into his game. He was sensational in Paris. Without him, we would probably lose that game comfortably. And he was starting to be the Nick Pope that that we all kind of know and love. Really, just a couple of scores are coming in there for the guys. Ian's gone low. He's give Pope a 5. 66 has give Pope an 8. And Cushy agrees with us for 7. Ian says to back up his score for 5. He can't kick, can't punch. Needed a keeper before his injury. Don't disagree with a new keeper possibly. Goalkeeper job is to start the ball going and not a pass, says 66. But I suppose the goalkeeper position has changed. It's all this sweeper keeper stuff. It's Edison, it's Allison. But I think in terms of pure shot stopping, Mark, Pope's probably one of the best in the league, isn't he? In terms of especially the size of the lad. He gets down really quick and his shot stopping is normally excellent, isn't it?
Yeah, and I sort of said this last season, didn't I? Where I think Pope's, you can argue that he's the best traditional goalkeeper left in the Premier League. I mean, there's not many of them now. But I mean, just to quickly give a couple of stats on it. I mean, he's played 19 games this season overall. He has a post-shot expected goals of 24.7, which means he's up by 5.7. So by that, you kind of go, well, he saved 5.7 goals. His goals that he's conceded are less in terms of the number of the number of goals he's conceded is far less in terms of goals per game than Dubravka has since he's come in. So, look, I've got to give him credit. He's not been horrendous. He's not been trouble. It could have been different, I guess. But he's done an all right job. We know he's probably not the future, but he's done all right.
Yeah, I think the summer might see a different goalkeeper coming in, potentially one that is maybe a bit more attuned to the modern game. I think just Kev's jumping in the comments there. Good to see you, Kev. He says 7 out of 10 for Pope as well, so he agrees on that one. Nice little segue for Dubravka there, mate. So when Dubravka came in, we were obviously a bit concerned. Everybody was crying for De Gea and stuff like that, a free transfer. And to be fair, Dubravka, the last couple of games, he's looked a bit sharper. His shot stopping's been magnificent. He was, basically a one man against the firing squad at Anfield. Really, and he did well against City as well. A couple of really good saves. I mean, the thing that worries me about Dubravka, I think people forget about this. We bought Nick Pope for 10 million for a reason, and there was a reason for that. That Dubravka was shaky as well. He made some real high profile glitches, especially on international duty. He's very hesitant to come off his line. Still very hesitant. I think he's very slow at that. Pope's a lot better at that. He comes out quicker, deals with it. He's not great with his feet, but he can deal with it. But Dubravka really does struggle with that, and I think Dubravka was angling for a move when Pope was signed because his nose was out of joint. That's why he went to Man U on loan. Didn't really work out for him. And then he's had to come back in and he's had to step in really and obviously be the goalkeeper. 66 thinks he's slotted in well, methinks. And I don't think Dubravka wants to be a number 2, Mark, does he? I think he wants to be a number 1. And to be fair, he's playing all right now in terms of his shot stopping prowesses and stuff. And people will start to remember, actually, he's an all right keeper. And maybe Dubravka might get a move potential off the back of that. But I've give Dubravka a 6 out of 10, which Kev agrees with. What's your score for Dubravka, mate?
So I kind of scored him the same as Pope. I've given him a 7, and I think it's just purely based on the fact
Goalkeepers Union.
I think Goalkeepers Union is part of it. But he saved an awful lot. And his save percentage is less than Pope's, but
how many has he conceded though since he's gone in?
Well,
I know it's been a bit harsh with the form and stuff. But, yeah.
And I'll always back up keepers in this part. A goalkeeper isn't the only one whose job it is to stop the ball going in the net. It's up to the defence and the midfield too. And if they're giving away the ball, he doesn't stand a hope in hell. I mean, his goals against per 90 is higher. His save percentage is slightly less in terms of the number of shots he's facing. But the number of saves he's making per game is much higher than Nick Pope. So I do give him some credit for, and especially keeping Newcastle in games at times. Thanks, Ian.
Ian thinks you calm down. I was just about to say, Ian,
we'll move off goalkeepers soon. So
yeah, you can tell he's a keeper, Ian. I was just about to say, when you go out for a meal, if they burn your food, you go looking to kick the chef's ass, don't you? So let's not give Dubravka a total pass for this. By the way, do you know what I mean? He does save a lot. But Ian says because the defense is shit. We're getting onto them in a minute, Ian. Don't you worry, mate. But yeah, I mean, I do feel a bit sorry for him because the defense has been woefully off form. So yeah, he has faced probably a lot more ammunition at him than Nick Pope has. But yeah, for me, 6, for Mark, 7. We're not going to score anybody else because Gillespie is great at carrying waters to and from training, and Karius is just really good looking. So that's pretty much the only scores that those two are going to get off us, really. So swiftly moving on to the defence, as I put the tags in as we were chatting. So we're going to kick off with, I say captain fantastic. He was for most of the season. Sadly, fell off a cliff the last few months. So we're going to start with Kieran Trippier. Now, when the season started, probably in all fairness, Mark, I would say about 75% of what we've played already. Kieran Trippier's been magnificent, really. It's only the last 6 to 8 weeks, maybe, where he's really dropped off a cliff. So I've scored Trippier 7 out of 10 because of that. He probably would have got an 8 or even maybe a 9 for me if he continued that form, with his assists and just his leadership and everything else. But because he's been so bad the last 6 weeks or so, and some of the high-profile mistakes that he made, the Spurs games and the Everton games, and I had to knock him down to a 7, mate. So what's your score for Trips?
And for that reason, I've gone lower. I've given him a 6. I think you can't overlook the number of mistakes he made in a row. And look, although he has the highest number of shot creation actions and things, he's still brilliant going forward in that regard, or he has been during the season. The mistakes have slipped in. The one at the weekend, I know a few people said it was entirely on him for the goal at the end. I don't blame him at all for that. There's barely a right
I blame
back
the
in the
midfield
world
for
that
that.
can
I blame the
cover.
midfield for that pushing back for
that. But you go back to Everton and just that run of mistakes, I just think really is sort of really hurt this season.
And arguing with a fan, arguing with a fan as well.
That's not always your smartest move.
No,
and I
even though the
understand
lad was
why,
mortal
but
drunk.
exactly. I understand why, but you can't. You just walk away at that point.
It's not a great look, is it? It's not a great look. Yeah. 66 has gone 7. He said the bar was high for Trippier last year, which is probably right. Cushy's gone 7 as well. Ian is going mad with 6.9s. I was 0.5s make me nervous at these kind of things. 9s, come on, mate, 9s. Right, but we'll get stuck into the rest of the defense. So I'm going to go to the magnificently handsome Swiss legend that is Fabian Schär. There's no surprise I've scored this fucking god of a man, 8 out of 10. What a fucking amazing defender this guy is. He has been brilliant. Even when we've been shit, Fabian Schär has stood out, and I think he's been fantastic. I think his defensive prowess, his positional sense, his tackling, his passing, and fuck me, he deserves 2 or 3 points just for the goal against Paris Saint-Germain alone, just for that absolute unbelievable strike, which is probably better than Philippe Albert's against Manchester United. So I'm going for 8 out of 10 for Fabian Schär because he is mint. He deserves his new contract. Mark, tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I've got 9. Schär's been exceptional. He's really stood up, and he had to. Look, when Botman went down for so long, that he really had to become the linchpin at the back. And yes, he
does get knocked out every week. He really does.
He gets one to the head every single week. But he had to step up. He had to be the sort of the boss at the back when Lascelles came in, because Lascelles isn't anywhere near the quality of Sven Botman. So he had to step up and do it. So yeah, I've gone above that. I just think his passing, his ability to move the ball, his tackling, his just general defensive play at times, while the defense overall has been poor leaky. At times, it has been leaky. That's a good way of putting it. He's stood up. He's been the one that, even when the shit's gone on, he's stood up, and he's been the one that stood above everybody else.
Yeah, and he's never scared to play either, which I love that about him. He's never scared to make something happen and step into midfield like he does, and it's a brilliant thing. I just wish he was 27 and not 31 or whatever he is, because he's, mind you, somebody would probably want to buy him for about 100 million if he was, because he's absolutely brilliant. So the next defender we've got on the list here is an interesting one. Gained a little bit of interest in the summer in terms of why did we buy him? Was he worth it? What the fuck are we spending 30 million quid on a backup right back for? It's Tino Livramento. And I'm more than happy to say this kid totally and utterly made anyone who doubted him eat their words when you saw him in the Carabao Cup. He was absolutely sensational. In every game he's played, for me, I think he's been brilliant. I think defensively, his tackling is great. His pace, his relentless energy for somebody so young, he just takes to it like a duck to water. Right back or left back, he seems to play excellently. And I've scored Tino 8 out of 10. And I think this kid is going to be an absolutely brilliant player for Newcastle and for England in years to come. I really do. And I think he's almost played himself at the start and left back position if he's fit. Obviously Trippier's backup is right there, mate, isn't it?
There is. I'm laughing at Ian again. 6.7.
6.7. Yeah. Ian's pissed with a calculator, isn't he? That's what he's doing. He's got a glass of wine and a calculator. I like it, mate. I like it. Tino.
I've got to agree with you. Tino, Nate, he's been brilliant. He's had more 9 out of 10 games than I can remember. When you look at it, he's had more sort of 9 out of 10 games, or 8 out of 10 games, or 10 out of 10 games for that matter. That Dan Burn has right the way through. And I agree with you that there has to be a thought on this going forward, that yes, he's not really been bought to play at left back, but when he's played, he's been exceptional. That is a good question.
And why does Howe keep playing Burn ahead of him? I don't get it myself, Kev. I really don't. I don't understand it. But you're right, Mark. He's been brilliant, and he's so young as well. He's just going to get better. And yeah, I think he was ill, wasn't he, against City? That's why he missed the game. Everyone was going mad about it. And I just hope he's back fit and raring to go for Villa, because I would definitely put him in there with, with the way Villa play and the pace that they have as well. A few more scores coming in. Ty says future captain Tino, number 9 or 9.2. Lee's got the calculator out as well. I love these scores. Let's find the most spurious score we could possibly have. George is sorry today. Not a problem, George.
Don't apologise.
More than happy to see you come in, mate. Worth the wait, pal. 66 says, because Burn is 8 foot tall. Well, speaking of Burn, mate, we're moving on to Dan Burn. He's our next one under the microscope. Now, I am always a bit harsh on Dan Burn. Just before I say this, I'm going to caveat it. I'm going to separate Dan Burn, the character, Dan Burn, the player. If I was scoring Dan Burn, the character, he'd be a 10 all day long. He's brilliant to have around the squad. He's infectious. He's a Geordie boy. He's living his dream. He was released by the club as a young lad. He's gone right around the houses through the leagues to get back to Newcastle, and he's been great for us. He really, really has been great for us. But now I've said that, he is an issue in terms of he's a weakness that teams have targeted. His lack of pace is there for everyone to see. Stevie Wonder can see Dan Burn's lack of pace. That's how bad it is. Yes, he's great in the air and all that, but when he plays at centre half, he's not going to turn his speed either. So much like some of the other guys here, I have scored Dan Burn 6 out of 10, same as you, Ty. George has gone 5 for Burn. Cushy's gone 6.5. Good to see you in the comments as well, Andrew. What's your score for Burn, mate? Am I being harsh?
No, I think, right, to be honest, I hummed and hawed between a 5 and a 6, and I went 6, and it's mainly due to the lack of anything that you get from him going forward.
Jack's right. He has dropped off, though. I know he's been injured. He has dropped off this year. He really has.
I don't think the injuries helped at all. I think perhaps he was rushed back a little bit too quickly, just for numbers in the squad. So, yeah, I kind of want to lean a bit further down than a 6, but I think that might be a bit harsh. He's
5.7.
Well at times. 5.7. There we go.
5.7 and a quarter.
It's just for me. It's when he plays, there's a total imbalance, and you know what's going to happen. Trippier's going to get forward. Burns going to sort of drop into as almost a third centre back at times, and he just doesn't get forward. He doesn't give the support going forward that Anthony Gordon probably wants. So, yeah, I think that for me is a huge area of need going forward. No one will get into that. But that left back slot is definitely one thing that really needs to change for the second half of the season at the very least.
It really does. I mean, to be fair, you look at that left-hand side with Gordon there, who's sensational. If you have a fit Tino Livramento up and down that wing with Gordon, or even if Lewis Hall can somehow come back from the phantom zone, wherever the fuck he's been banished by Eddie Howe, and actually look like the player that Chelsea had for 12, 15 games, whatever it was last season. That's another brilliant addition to that left-hand side. And Burns got to slip down the pecking order and really be, centre-back cover, really, want of a better word. Got a comment there from Merrick before. We'll get into the next defender. Burns a good bench player. I do agree with that, Merrick. When he wanders, it drives me mad. It's like he's running in 6 foot of water trying to get back. He really is. It's like he's got a caravan on his back. And Lee says, I think Burns still got a shoulder. I think Burns always had a dodgy shoulder, Lee, and missing fingers and everything. I think the lads, held together with fucking masking tape. But that's the kind of defender he is. He throws himself in front of anything. And like I say, as a guy, he's a top bloke. He seems like a lovely guy to have around the squad. And I'm sure Eddie trusts him as one of his leaders. But the main issue is he is a limited player, and he does get targeted with people with pace. The Nottingham Forest game, prime example. He should never have fucking played that game. Never played that game. Alanga was out there, totally went after him and just ripped him to pieces. And that, we could have seen that, in the crowd or watching on TV, we could have seen that was a bad move. And again, that was something Eddie got wrong. We'll get into Eddie's score later, but that is something that Eddie got wrong as well. So moving on to the next defender, it is the Rolls Royce himself, who sadly has had a few fender benders this season already. It's Sven Botman. I'm going 7 out of 10. Says Sven Botman, just because the main fact is when he is fit and playing, he's still mint. He reads the game well. He is rusty because he's only just getting back from a long-term injury, but Botman is silk. Botman is class. He has a presence at the back. He calms everybody down. And if I'm giving Burn a 6, I cannot give Botman a 6. I've got to give him more than Burn, because even though he's been knackered for, how many games has he been out injured, Mark? I think you've got some of the injury stats up on the back.
But just to give a context to some of it as well. So I think Ben Botman was missing for 18 games this season. That's a horror list, that, to be honest with you. But
terrible.
yeah, Botman
We'll
was missing
back into that later.
18 games.
18 games, and that's a massive blow for us. And that's probably one of the big reasons we are where we are, really. But yeah, I'm giving him a 7. Just before we get your score, Michael Burgess saying, my frustration, probably like everyone else, without injuries, stroke, Tonali, we'd probably be top 6, maybe top 4. We need to replace the whole medical staff. We ain't scoring them, Michael, but if we do, they'd get a very, very low score, in my opinion, because I don't know what the fuck they're doing there. Playing Operation, I think, remember the old game from when you were a kid? You played Operation, had to pull the plastic bones out. I think that's what their qualifications are as a medical team. They've definitely let us down. But what's your score for the Botman, Mark?
Yeah, can't disagree with the 7 for him. It's a little early for him, I think. If you go, he's only played 13 games, 14 games. I think 13 games. Like the difference is noticeable when he's in the side, that you get more passing out from him, as opposed to when Lascelles is there. You know the ball can go back to him, and he's got that quality to be able to manage the ball on the deck. He's just, most of the time it's a calmness. It's just the quality, like I say, that he shows in that regard. And hopefully that more games that they play, the more games they can get that group together and get back to some sort of defensive performances that we saw from them last season, because they were exceptional. And it's been a sea change this season for them, but in that regard.
It does. Lee's given Botman a solid 9.34. I'm waiting for 1.21 gigawatts coming for one of these scores in a minute, because they're all over the place, but we love them. We love them. The last defender then on the list, before we get into the bitty pot players towards the end of this, these are just players that have played, a kind of a string of games, is Jamal Lascelles. Now, before I give you my Lascelles score, Lascelles surprised me, much like many other people, because I thought he was dead weight. I thought he was gone. I thought he was out. I thought we were going to move him on, upgrade on him. I thought even Alex Murphy might have stepped in to take over his position as the backup centre half, potentially looked good in pre-season. And he came in when Botman was injured, and he did a great job. He was strong. He was quick. He looked like Eddie's improved him a bit on the ball. And he looked a bit more calm than he normally has. But that being said, I still think he's got limitations as a player. I still think he's where Newcastle were, not where we need to be. And I've given him a 6 out of 10, which might be a bit harsh. But what's your score for Big Jamal?
I give him a 7, because look, I think
not a keeper.
No, but look, what was everybody's expectation when he came in?
Yeah,
they all expected it to backfire. He was done, like you said. He was Championship. He wasn't going to be able to play Premier League football or Champions League football. He was going to get torn to shreds, and he stood up. He was brilliant. He's defended magnificently at times. It's not the same, like I say, as the Shaw-Botman combination, but he stood up, and he's done exactly the job that he was really asked to do. So I can't give him anything less than a 7, really.
No, Jamal, if you're watching, I'm sure Mark, but you'll say hi to Mark when you see him outside the ground. Not me, maybe, but to be fair, he has been linked to Besiktas, hasn't he, today? Which I can't see happening. I can't see how allowing Lascelles to go, given what he's given while he stepped in with the injuries, and with Botman still kind of feeling his way back from injury, and share one more head injury away from being out and wrapped in bandages. I can't see us moving Lascelles on, so I don't think that'll happen. But maybe in the summer, there might be a few players that go in the summer. So moving on to the midfield, which should be an interesting topic of conversation. So we're going to start with the man who everyone's talking about at the minute for other reasons than playing for Newcastle. Everyone seems to want him to play for everybody else, and it is Bruno Guimaraes, our midfield Brazilian superstar. Now, mixed bag for Bruno for me. It'd be interesting to see what the guys in the comments are saying about Bruno. So Bruno's class. Bruno's brilliant. We love Bruno. He's mint on the ball when he's up for it, and his passing, his control, pumping the crowd up, the Vamos, the character, everything about Bruno is, he's infectious as a player. We love him, and he's class as well. I've already seen Cushy's score coming there. You might go mad when I tell you my score. So I scored Bruno 7 out of 10. And the reason I've scored him 7 out of 10 is he has gone missing when we've needed him in some key games. He has stomped around the pitch, clotheslining people off the ball, losing his head a little bit, getting a bit pissed off, getting wound up. He's on 9 yellow cards, which I think Kev just said in the comments there as well. 9 yellow cards. He will get booked against Villa, I guarantee it. Douglas Luiz will rattle into him and he'll get wound up and he'll smash one back in him and get another yellow card and be suspended for 2 games because that's his 10th yellow card. I think he's it sounds like I'm burying him. I'm not. I love Bruno, but I think in that midfield, when we talk about the young players who's had to play alongside him, so he's lacked a bit of leadership. He's lacked a bit of that, control in terms of telling somebody to track back or you drop in if I'm going forward. And he seems to have been a bit caught up in the moment too much, chasing the headlines, wanting that 30-yard screamer or that perfect through ball. And I just think he's sometimes got himself in a little bit of trouble. But that being said, he's probably our best player. Him and Alexander Isak, I would say. And I wouldn't want to lose him for love nor money, but I'm not going to give him an 8 or a 9 because I just think there's been more than a couple of occasions where he's maybe just not delivered, Mark. So I'm going 7 out of 10. What's your score for Bruno?
Yeah, again, I sort of debated 7 and 8, but
yeah, I started with an 8, didn't I? And I dropped down to 7. So.
You did, and I'm kind of in the same boat. There's a lot of that red mist that he needs to get rid of. I love the passion, but he has to control it. But quite simply for me, he needs to provide more of a goal threat and a goal creation threat. 1 goal and 3 assists in 20 games in the Premier League, for me, isn't enough for him. Yeah. And I know he's probably a victim of how he's having to play with the players around him, but I want to see that drive from him. I want to see more from him. And we saw exactly what he can do with that ball through against City. That's the Bruno that won. And I know
ball that was brilliant.
It was. And I'm going against myself here, and I'm going to argue with myself by saying that he's been hampered by the fact that he hasn't had really a regular striker to play with in terms of the lack of games with Wilson being out and Isak being out and Isak not being fit. But we haven't seen that link up as well with Miggy this season. We haven't seen him really link up quite as well with Gordon just yet. But I want more from him. I'd like exactly that. I want to see from Bruno him further forward and influencing the game in the opposition half, not on the halfway line. So probably a harsh one.
Merrick's right. That number 6 gives him that license to go. And even Miley as well, which we'll come on in a minute. If you have a 6 sitting, it allows Bruno and Miley to get further up the park and be involved in the attacking play. And I think we need that. We need that for both. Gary's making a good point there just before you jump back in, Mark. We haven't won a game without Bruno. So that is a very valid point.
It is. And I'll always go back to what happened when he first signed for the club. Where was he playing? He was playing in that more advanced role. He had Shelvey sitting behind to do the what Bruno does now. That was his job.
Did he get 5 or 6 goals as well?
5 goals in that second half of the season. So I want, as a player for me, Bruno has to be in and around the edge of their box. He has to be influencing the midfield in their half of the, much like you see from the likes of, I guess, Odegaard and players like that who are influencing the play a little bit further forward, getting in around the box, getting shots in, getting through balls, assists, all that kind of stuff. That's what I want to see from him.
Yeah, no, and again with that number 6 there, potentially like those 2 goals against City, the number 6 is in De Bruyne's face enough to distract him for someone like Bruno to come pick his pocket, coming back from that attacking position, so we do need that player. So the next one is definitely going to curry some controversy, I think, in the comments, and it's Sean Longstaff. Sean Longstaff was magnificent for us last season, 2 goals, get us in the Carabao Cup. Final, I think it was, wasn't it, as well? And he was box to box. He was, I called him Sean Longstaff. He never stopped running. He's really been poor this season. He's really dropped off. He's had injuries as well, which hasn't helped him. He had a couple of little spells where he looked like he was getting back to his best, and he got injured again. Since he's come back, I think he's come back from injury too soon. I think he's pushed himself forward to make the Champions League and then make the derby, and I think he's really hampered himself because of that. Because what Longstaff gives you more than anything is that ability to run and run and run. and he's not been able to do it with any real purpose. And I think I said this a few times, haven't I, that his quality on the ball is so poor. And because he's surrounded by players who are much better on the ball than him, and Bruno and young Miley even coming at the side, it makes it more obvious how bad Sean is on the ball. So it negates all of his hard work off the ball. So I've gave Sean a 6 out of 10, and judging by some of the comments that have flown in here, I think Sean's gotten a lot worse scores than that. George has given him a 4. Ian's gone 5.5. Kev's a 4. What's your score for Sean, mate?
I think I probably agree with Ian there. 5.5 is probably about right. He's still, the effort's still in there. But for me,
the desire's there. Yeah,
it is. But the quality's not. And you're right. The ability on the ball just isn't at the level Newcastle want to be at. He of the 5 main midfielders this season, he has the lowest pass completion percentage, and that includes Lewis Miley. So for me, he's just not at it at the moment. And I want that endeavour. I want to see the work rate that he puts in, but at the same time, you want the quality to go with it. You want to see passes going to the right place. It's not right. And I don't think he's been completely fully fit for a lot of it. Again, he's another one that's been rushed back in a little bit too quickly. Kevin's right. His finishing is absolutely atrocious.
He should have had a hat-trick in the derby, to be fair. He should have had a fucking hat-trick.
Easily. Yeah. When you think, but his MO at every point that he gets into a shooting position, realistically, is he leans back and he catches the ball underneath the ball. He's not in the right position. He hasn't got his head in the right place to strike through the ball instead of striking underneath it. And those are things you should be learning quickly.
If Longstaff had Kevin Nolan's finishing ability, he'd probably have about 40 goals a season. The amount of positions he gets himself in, he does. Yeah, I think that's a fair one. And to be honest with you, if the stories going around about Joe Willock potentially being fit against Villa are true, and if Willock can stay fit, and we do manage to sign a defensive midfielder, I could see Sean dropping to the bench and being an impact player, because I think the quality will be better than him that they can get in the starting 11. So. It even breaks my heart saying the name of this player, especially with the shit that's gone out in the social media recently about his contract. Joe Linton. Joe Linton has been so in and out this season. Injuries, niggly injuries, coming back, breaking down, come back against Liverpool, even though we got battered. He was the best player on the park. He bossed the derby. He was the reason we probably won the derby, in all fairness. He's got this mental, tendon injury now, surgery out for the season. And now the news is breaking that there's a contract standoff between him and the club. I really hope that can be resolved, because this player's arc from a shit striker to an unbelievable midfield powerhouse is the stuff of fucking Hollywood movies. It really is. And I'd be devastated if Joe Linton was to go. As 66 says there, he's nails. He's the physicality in that midfield. He's just an absolute monster of a man. He loves the club by looks of it. The club stood by him when he's been really shit, and everyone was going 40 million. What the fuck is that? And anyhow, helped him become this player. I've gave Joe 7 out of 10, mainly because of the injuries and the ins and the outs. What's your score for Big Joe?
I've given him an 8. Look, he's
given him an 8. Yeah.
He is such a big miss when he's not in the side, and that physical presence in the midfield, which this midfield needs. With this identity of it, intensity is the identity of the team. But for the midfield in particular, it's constant pressing, it's running, it's pressuring the opposition, it's making them make mistakes. Joe Linton epitomises that. I'm just having a quick look at it. The number of players tackled, the number of tackles won. He has 30. Well, I'm not even sure I believe this, but according to FB Ref, he's got 33 tackles won from 35 players tackled.
I believe that. Because he never seems to lose a challenge. He just goes in, guts and glory, and he's just fucking brilliant at it, mate. So I don't disagree with that.
No, but that shows the measure that the play. Yes, he gets the odd one wrong, and he will get yellow cards because of the physical nature of him. But he's just such a must for that midfield, and without him,
I wish he was fit.
Loss.
I wish he was fit for the run of the season. Because he, the likes of Villa will be licking their chops seeing Joe Lit now for the rest of the season. They'll be thinking, we'll do for that, because he's such a presence, you're right, Mark, in midfield, and such a big miss. And I hope the club can get something sorted for him. I really do, because it's such a shame to lose him. Just a few more of your scores, guys. A lot of you are in 7.5, 8s. Merrick's saying again there that Joe Litton's just class. He roars the crowd on. That's true. He is. Him on the pitch, the presence is just sensational. You're right, Gary. We've got to keep him. And Ian's saying the veins in the leg scare me. Maybe the leg was so pumped up, that's why it popped, just because it couldn't deal with the pure bestiality running through the veins, possibly, mate. But moving on to the next player, who, to be honest with you, we're talking about injuries, we're talking about the shit times and the sad times. This player has been a highlight for me. This player has been a bright spark. I love it when you get something unexpected, something that, even if you're slightly aware of the player, as we saw him last season. He hit the bar from miles out against Chelsea. Probably a good thing I didn't go in, because he might have had a Wayne Rooney explosion moment if that happened. But pre-season, he looked great in America. We knew waxing lyrically about him. We thought, fucking hell, this kid looks incredible. And I'm talking about Louis Miley, coming into this side, 17 years old. He looks about 12. But what a footballer this young kid is. The games that he's played, the mentality to show the maturity and the discipline. That performance in the Parc des Princes was incredible. Tackling Mbappe like it was one of his mates at 5-a-side. He got his first goal against Fulham. He's got a couple of assists for Isaac. He looks like he's got that vision, that ability to spot a pass before the ball even comes to him, which is amazing. And if we can harness that, this player could be incredible. I don't like all this noise about having to sell him. You think, no, don't sell him. You want to grow him. You want him to be our fucking Gerrard or Foden. That's what we want Miley to be. So I've given Miley a 7 out of 10, just because for 17 years old to step in, market in this situation and be as good as that. I mean, the kid deserves all the praise that he gets, mate. He really does. What's your score for Louis?
I give him an 8. Look, he's another one of those absolutely unexpected ones. I think it's maybe harsh. We said pre-season when we saw him, he looked the part. We screamed for weeks. Where is he? Why is he not in the squad? Why is he not there?
Why is Richie in the squad over him? What's going on? I kept saying that all the time.
We'll get to Richie later. But he's just come in, and as Ian says, he's shown absolutely no fear. He's come in against some of the best players in the world and hasn't looked out of place. He has bossed £100 million midfielders multiple times and done it without breaking a sweat. He is the future of this of the club. He 100%. Absolutely is the future. He has to be built around now. Managed well, manage minutes, because he is so young. You don't want to overload it. You don't want him breaking down. But I'm sure. Sorry, he has to be the one that this club is built for the future, because he's special, and he will continue to be that. He just doesn't look out of place in the Premier League or the Champions League.
But it's interesting, because we were talking about Louis Miley, and I was talking to the lads about it when I was at the game, that we might end up in a situation like City did, where they were allowed to let David Silva go because you had Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva. Phil Foden was the one everyone kept saying, this lad is unbelievable. He's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And Louis has that kind of buzz about him that you look at the quality that he's got. The only thing I think he lacks is he is slow. He hasn't got a lot of pace. And you can see that he sometimes looks a bit labouring when he's running, but I think because he's such a good player on the ball, that lack of pace doesn't really matter, because he's so good on it. And if you have that number 6 sitting, that's why that's so imperative. It allows Louis to be freer up the park and spot those balls and put through balls down the line for the wingers, slip in Isaac, because he's not worried about tracking back and defending, which he can do. But yeah, I agree with you, Mark. I think we should build the side around the kid. But my whole point is that if Bruno is to go for this big cash in, if this kid keeps progressing at the level he's progressing, he can step right into that position. And we're not as worried. Thank you so much for your fiver, Ty. We really appreciate that, mate. And 7.5 for Miley on Ty. Do you want one more thing on Louis Miley, mate, before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about his pace. There are moments when I've seen that he's just sort of picked up. Maybe he's over recent weeks, and I think he trusts himself a little bit more just to chase back and to do that. You're right. I think it will just come with time. It's just about him learning a little bit more about the pace of the game where he's at. But there are plenty of midfield players over the last 20 years that have had very little pace and been exceptional footballers.
Yaya Toure wasn't the quickest. Michael Ballack wasn't the quickest. Michael Carrick wasn't the quickest. You look at these players; they don't need the pace because they've got the brain. They've got the brain.
Beckham was infamously slow. Scholes wasn't the quickest. Frank Lampard wasn't the quickest. He timed his runs to perfection.
No,
so
exactly.
Look, we're not gonna compare him to them just yet. But if he can utilize his brain on the field, that will pay much better than more pace, and a little bit more pace will come as he grows a little bit as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and he is going to fill out. He's a 17-year-old lad. He's going to fill out. He's going to grow. He's going to get more muscly. Remember Ronaldo? Just before we move on from Louis, remember when Ronaldo was at Manchester United? In the sign of he was this skinny little geeky scrawny thing, and he went away one summer and come back like a fucking middleweight boxer. Who's to say Louis Mine he couldn't do the same thing? Imagine he comes back in pre-season next season. He's built like a brick shithouse, and he's got all that quality as well. I mean, never mind about worrying about Joe and Bruno. Fucking hell, we won't need them if this kid comes back like that. But yeah, a great player, such a great prospect, and I'm absolutely buzzing with what this kid could achieve, and I hope he achieves it in a black and white shirt because he's just absolutely fantastic. So one last midfielder now. This is also going to get the tongues wagging in the comments. This is the one
machine.
This is the tin hat on moment, isn't it? Of course, I'm talking about. I nearly made a betting joke there. I'm talking about the Italian stallion that is firmly locked away in the stables for 10 months. It is Sandro Tonali, our big summer signing, our 50+ million quid big summer signing that we signed for Champions League games that he never really played in. He obviously got suspended for the betting scandal. Now, that aside, before that, he played about, 12 games or something, Mark, I think it was. His debut against Villa was what everybody goes back to, and he looked class in the debut. We did. Him and Bruno and Joe were working so well together, and we thought, wow, this is the best midfield in the league, After that, he really tailed off for me. He didn't show up against Brighton. Nobody did. I thought he was all right for about 20 minutes against Liverpool. Then he disappeared. I remember the game against West Ham with his little dangly leg out for that clearance, which was nowhere near good enough. Yeah, he did all right against AC Milan and Paris Saint-Germain, but by and large, I felt that he struggled. Every time you say that, people say, "Oh, well, he struggled because he had this thing on his, on his mind, and he couldn't do this, and he couldn't do that." Now, yeah, it's an illness, and me and Mark have said numerous times on the channel we feel sorry for him and all that, but he made his bed and he had to lie in it, right? So, he should have concentrated on putting the best performances in that he could before he did that. I appreciate he's trying to get used to a new league and players and all that kind of stuff, but that's a long way around of saying my score. For me, Sandro Tonali is 5 out of 10 for me, Mark. A few of the guys have already gone lower than that. What is your score for Sandro? Are you going to be nicer than me because you have done every other one?
No.
Or are you going to go the same? No.
No, I would say 5. We haven't seen enough.
No,
we absolutely have not seen enough from Sandro.
Not to make him this saviour player that everyone claims that he's going to be. I've not seen that.
I've seen a few comments recently, over the last month maybe, of, well, this is the player that's missing. This is the player that if we had him in the midfield. You can't, because we just don't have the sample size. We don't have the ability to say, well, this is what he would have been like had he played. Yes, he's been great in Italy. It's a different style of league. He has to get used to the Premier League. I completely understand that. But you can't turn around and say that the difference, one of the biggest differences of this season, the fact that he's not been available. We just don't know what he would have done had he been playing. And this look back with rose tinted specs, isn't it? And look at the potential that he has rather than what he's actually shown.
Yeah, what is that word that you discovered about it?
I think it's rosy retrospection. So it's referring to a tendency to recall the past more fondly than the present. I guess it's maybe it's not quite the right thing, but that rose tinted sort of glasses where you're looking at something much more fondly than actually deserves to have. I think he's gotten there. His reputation is causing people to look at it to go, well, this is the player that's coming back. We don't know yet. The sample size isn't there yet.
Honestly, do you know what it is? It's funny. We'll get into him in a minute, right? But by all kind of things, perspective and facts and figures and what you've seen in that time in a black and white shirt, not the previous shirt, right? Harvey Barnes should be the one people are more excited about coming back than Tonali, because Barnes' goals and assists and can change games. Tonali, all he did was get in Bruno's way. Yeah, he scored a goal against Villa. But other than that, he just got in people's way. Didn't do enough defensively, in my opinion. And I didn't see anything that people were saying. I was with a couple of lads after the City game, and we even said, PK, obviously, big friend of the channel, PK, we were talking, and one of the lads had said, we haven't got our best player. And we looked and went, who? And he went, Sandro Tonali. We went, and PK went, how can you say that? And he's right. How could you say this kid is our best player? Because, and like you say, Mark, it's the rosy retrospection that they think he's going to come back and be this amazing player. He might not come back and be that player at all. Do you know what? He might not even fucking come back. He might say he wants to go back on loan to Serie A. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen with Tonali when that ban is lifted. But nobody knows.
No, the potential's there. The reputation that goes with him, it is there. So if he has a year of training and learning, and as Michael says there, he could come back and be an absolute monster next season. He's got a year of being in and around the squad. He hasn't been banned from training or from being around the first team, so that will help him massively for when he comes back.
Yeah.
But we just don't know yet. But I suspect that he will be exceptional when he does come back, because he's had time to learn. Ultimately, though, from your fans' point of view, it's just massively frustrating to sit there watching a £55 million player unable to play because of his own, well, I'm sorry, but his own stupidity.
But it isn't. Gary says it stinks, and there's a few fans that have very much the same mentality about that. We'll have to wait and see what happens with it, Gary. But yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. But we're moving on to the forwards now, and we're gonna start with somebody juicy. You had to get him in first, didn't you, mate? So Jacob Murphy again is another player who completely changed perceptions, I think, of everybody in the Newcastle fan base. We all thought again he was done, he was cooked, he was finished, he was rubbish. And my God, the lad just come back, and he looked like he really knuckled down. He worked on his game. His pace and endeavour was never in doubt. Murphy, he always wanted to do well, but he made the wrong run or the wrong pass, or his head just didn't seem screwed on. But Eddie seems to have helped them sort that out. And not only is he massively infectious as well, in terms of in the squad, you can see he's a real joker and character, and everybody likes him, and he does some brilliant things on social media, and he's responsible for so many gifs and memes already. But on the football pitch, he was brilliant. He was a great alternative to Mickey Almiron and Gordon as well. He gave you something. He gave you pace, and he started to be able to score goals. And it was just such a shame that he got injured. And again, I think let down massively by the medical staff, being allowed to come back so quickly from his shoulder injury and doing himself in again. But I'm giving Jacob Murphy a 7. I think that's echoed by a few guys in the comments. Mark, what's your score for Jacob Murphy, mate?
Yeah, for a player who has 5 goal contributions in 3.390s this season, he's played in 9 games, started 3, has 1 goal and 4 assists. He gets a 7 from me, because I genuinely think when he's played really, really well. And again, it's one of those that's come in and when you how many times last season it was, oh my God, it's what's it like when you've got Murphy on the bench, and that's your change, that's the way that you change the game. And he's really changed people's opinion of him. He's been brilliant. And again, another player that's been really, really missed this season. And he's missed an awful lot of football.
He has, and it's such a shame. And there's rumours that he might be back soon. Actually, I think him, Willock, Anderson, and him, I think it sound like they're really getting close, which is great. It's a 9 from Gary for Murphy. Improved his game in every possible way. Richard says grafter, 7, same as us. Now, moving on to the next player, for me, I'm calling it right now, our player of the season by a country mile. How this kid hasn't walked into the England squad is beyond me. My God, talk about changing opinions of a player. When we signed this lad, loads of Newcastle fans were going, what the hell was signing him from? He's horrible. He's a rat. He's this, he's that. He's blah, 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 blah. Anthony Gordon has been utterly sensational for Newcastle United. The back end of last season, he struggled to get fit. He had a little spat with Eddie on the sideline. He goes away with the England team, the 21s. and he's brilliant. He plays the centre forward position, and he comes straight back to pre-season, match sharp, hits the season running. What has he got? 7 goals, I think, Mark, and 5 assists or something. He's been absolutely sensational. He's so much of a threat against all teams, small teams, big teams. Look at him. He put Walker on toast at the weekend, and he was absolutely brilliant. So Gordon, for me, player of the season so far, Mark, 9 out of 10. What's your score for Flash?
Yeah, he gets a 9 from me. You're right, 7 goals, 5 assists. He's top of the goal creating actions list as well. He's second only behind Trippier in terms of shot creating actions as well. He's been brilliant. I think the annoyance with this season, I think from a fan's perspective, again, is the fact that he hasn't been allowed rest to be able to be
that. We burned him out. We burned him out.
And understandably so, I guess, because of the lack of options and the number of injuries. But he's played, what is it? Has he been involved in 30 games, 27 starts? I think only Miggy has played in more games overall this season. So he's been involved in pretty much every single one. And he's been asked to do an awful lot of work, and he does need a rest at times, but he's been exceptional. He's definitely been the highlight, I think, of the outside of Miley. He's been the highlight, I think, of the season.
100%. As George said, no rest, and he's still turning games. So that shows you the quality of the player. If we were to get Barnes back and Willock back and be able to rotate those players around, you could rest them. And have even more of an impact out of him, in my opinion. Yeah, but Gordon has been absolutely brilliant. He really has. Now, moving on to the next player, again, this will be another one that divides opinion. The source of many fan content creator rants, Miggy Almiron. The man with 1 foot, the flamingo of the Newcastle United squad. Weirdly enough, he did actually cross with his right foot against Sunderland. I was starting to wonder whether he was feeling ill and that was a side effect or something like that.
2 against City. Two against City.
God. Maybe somebody's impersonating him. They'll pull off the mask. It'll be Mahrez underneath. It's just Miggy. It'll pretend he's Miggy. But yeah, I've given Miggy a 6 out of 10. Frustrating is an understatement of Miggy Almiron. I think about the game. Was it Milan when he's a yard out, and he doesn't use his fucking right foot?
Not even that. Not even a yard.
He could have farted on it and it would have went in the back of the net, and he still fluffs that. He fucks up easy chances. He runs around headless. I think I've seen comment there. Runs around like a headless chicken. We're too rash in decision making. But then you see the Sunderland game, you see the City game, and he presses people and he puts them under pressure and he makes them make mistakes, and he's got endless energy. As a squad player, I think Miggy Almiron is a good squad player. Somebody, as you said there about Murphy, could you imagine if we had better quality on that right-hand side, if we had a Mahrez or a Chiesa, and 70 minutes in the game, it's just not working out. Legs are tired, and all of a sudden you bring the Duracell fucking bunny on to run at you like that when you're tired and got cramp and the hamstrings feeling sore. He would be an absolute nightmare. And talk about having game changers on the bench. Miggy could win you a penalty, score you a goal. And I think we would appreciate him more as an impact sub than we would do as a starting player that we hang everything on. So that's my score. What's your score for Miggy?
Yeah, I give him a 6 again. The real letdown for me for Almiron is the number of chances he creates, the number of assists he gets. It's only 1 again so far in the Premier League this season. I think he's got 3 assists overall. 1 in the Champions League, 1 in the FA Cup against Sunderland, and 1 against Chelsea, I think it was, in the Premier League. It's not enough for a forward player. He's got 5 goals in all competitions as well. He's nowhere near the level we kind of saw last season. We expected that. I don't think anybody really thought, well, we're going to get another 10 plus goal season from him. I really can't see it. But for me, it's the letdown of the number of chances he creates. He's so hesitant when he gets into that position forward to drive beyond the fullback and get to the byline or get himself into a position where he can cross the ball. He's so easy to defend against at times, and we time and time again, it cut back, and you lose momentum of that play. And my other frustration was one I talked about the other week, where his just inability to run with his head up when he runs with the ball.
Yeah.
And that's a sign of the quality. You look at some of the players we talked about, Foden before. When Foden runs, Foden's head never drops. It's always up. It's always scanning. De Bruyne, Grealish, those players. I know I'm naming City players, but they're kind of the stand-up. They never look down. They know where the ball is. They don't need to look down. When Mickey runs, he has to be like this constantly to check where the ball is.
Miley doesn't look down. If you look at Miley, doesn't look down. He's 17 years old. Miley's looking up all the time. His head's up all the time. He's looking for a pass, and that's the difference. But I'm just looking at Jack's comment there. Miggy's a forward. He can only think of one game this season where he hasn't completely pissed him off, which is probably the best summary on Miggy. Just another point on Miggy, Mark, before you come back in. A really good point, actually. I watched the True Faith podcast that they did with Greg Hope, and it was a brilliant listen and watch. If anyone hasn't do it, go check it out. It was a really, really good show. And Alex made a really good point on that show that Darren Eales was talking about, selling players and, having to sell assets and everything else. There was no better time to sell Miggy Almiron than the summer. He had the best season he's ever had in his life. He might have been able to get 30 million quid from him and reinvest that into a much better player and upgrade on that player. I think Darren Eales' affiliation and affection for him because of that time in America clouded that judgment. And I think we kept Almiron on when we should have sold him for a better player. And in the Champions League, I'm not saying these players, I'm just giving you examples. Had we signed a Diaby that went to Villa, had we signed a Chiesa, even if we'd signed a Maddison, yes, I know he wouldn't fit the shape and all that bollocks, but had we signed one of those three players, I think they'd have done more in the Champions League for us than Almiron did overall. I know he got his goal against PSG, but overall, I think they would have had more of a chance in winning his games against Dortmund and Milan than Miggy did.
The other one, and I guess, hampered by injuries again. If Barnes is fit, does he play? Because Barnes plays left, Gordon plays right. I don't think Miggy fits in there. And again, you then use him as an impact sub, which I think suits him better. And we know that the love that Eddie has for him and his reluctance.
And Eales. Don't forget about Eales. Eales has got big love for him.
So there's an element there too. But I just think for anything, he's sort of been more of a victim kind of this season of the fact that he's been another one that's overused. Like I said before, he's played the most games this season. He may not have played the most minutes, but he's played the most games.
He's been found out, as you say. He's easy defending. He's been found out. Yeah. Just talks back all the time.
And that was evident last season, and it was evident the season before that. We know what Miggy is. We know what he will give you. He's another Duracell bunny. He's not going to stop. He will give you all the effort in the world, but he doesn't have the consistent end product.
I agree with that from Dean. Sorry, Barnes is twice the player. Almiron is. I really agree with that. I think if he gets back fit and gets a run, I think everyone will see that. There was a comment for Neto for Miggy, which was a good one. He's a very good player. Could be able to get him. This is a great comment from Tyban. Miggy, just one last bit of Miggy, Mark. The summer series, he was the main marketing tool, wasn't he? Because of his affiliation with the MLS.
Yeah, there's possibly an element of that. It's hard, isn't it? Because when you've had such a good season, when you've been such an integral part of a team that's done so well, you don't want to break that up. But it's just we're not going to see Miggy from last season again. We're really not. I don't think it doesn't matter how many years he plays. He's had his peak. He's had his moment, and he's gone back to Miggy from before. He's hard working. He's lovable. He's great to wear down opposition, but he doesn't have the end product.
Yeah, true. So moving on to another player who does have end product and fucking bags of it as well. It's Alexander Isak. Now, I've given Alexander Isak an 8.5 out of 10. I would have given Alexander Isak a 9 or even a 10 had he not had injuries. He's got, 14 goals overall this season, I think. Scored in the Champions League, scored an unbelievable Henry-esque goal at the weekend against Manchester City. Everyone's been saying it, and the mainstream media talk shite, and a lot of them, that Alexander Isak is the second best striker in the Premier League behind Erling Haaland. I think when he's fit, Mark, and he's at it, I think that is absolutely 100% right. This guy is fucking sensational. Quick feet. I always say he's like a ghost haunting centre-back's dreams, isn't he? That's what he's like. And when he's fit, when he's at it, like he was. I mean, he can only seem to last about an hour at the minute, but then he burns out, and then there's no option to replace him, which is part of the problem. But when you see what he's capable of, like on Saturday against the best of the best, he was fucking outstanding. And if Isak can get sharper and sharper, get this warm weather camp through, get a little bit sharper, a little bit fitter, come back, get another goal against Villa. I think he could end the season with 20 plus goals. And I think we haven't even begin to see how good Alexander Isak is. So 8.5 out of 10 for me, mate. What's your score?
Can we just go back to the comments that were made by people when he signed for what, 60 odd million pounds about the fact that season for Sociedad he'd only scored 6 goals in the league? We just
none of the comments from us,
the,
mate. They were salty fans from Arsenal and Liverpool and Man United and all that.
Do we just remind him of the fact that that last season he scored 10 goals in 17 starts, or 22 games overall? It was only 16.9 19s played. He's already got that this season. He's got 14 overall from, is it 17? I think it is. Number of 90s played. I'm trying to find my stat now. Yeah, so 14 goals from 17.8. His goals per game ratio is exceptional. He's a 9 for me because that goal ratio is phenomenal. Again, he's another one that's been pampered by the fact that he can't be rested. With Wilson out, with no other striker available, he's having to play much more minutes than you would want him to. I think if he'd run his course in 60 minutes, you bring him off, you give him 30 minutes rest, and he's right to go the next week, and he maybe plays 65 or 70 minutes. But he's been asked to run a lot more. He needs rest as well because he's missed a few games this season. He's struggled with injury, and he's another one that needs a little bit of protection. But he is a frightening forward, and there's a very reason that others want him or others are interested. I heard Darren Bent on TalkSport earlier on saying that he'd be quite happy parting with 100 million for him, and that says everything. I think that says everything about that sort of player. That if you're willing to part with that sort of money for a striker, he's pretty good.
And he does a mean Geordie accent as well, to be fair. We should get an extra point just for that, really, shouldn't he? Alone, I feel like we have to have strictly paddles here where we're giving everybody a score. But he is sensational. And I tell you what, I can't wait to see how well he plays with Benzema when the January transfer window is wrapped up. So I really think those two could bounce well off each other, mate, to be fair. But I'm only joking. Or am I? Who knows? So speaking of other strikers, the handsome devil himself is the last one to score, Callum Wilson. We love Callum Wilson. He's a fantastic centre forward. He's a great character. He's a great podcast host as well, actually, to be fair. He seems to be able to do everything but stay fit is the issue that he has. He's not getting any younger. More injuries are coming again. I actually do think, as much as I love Callum Wilson, tell me the goals, Mark. I'm going to guess it. Has he got about, is it 8 goals Wilson's got? Is it 8 goals or more?
It's 8 goals and 1 assist this season.
8 goals, yeah. See, I'm doing well here, aren't I? 8 goals. He started the season well. He looked the part, then he dropped off again and the injury started to come back. I actually think it's going to be a big summer for Newcastle. And I think Wilson could be one of those assets that Eels was talking about that's sold. I can see that happening. I really can, alongside Almiron. So for me, Wilson gets a 7 out of 10. I want him back fit. I want him and Isak fit for the remainder of the season. And if Wilson goes on one of those runs like he did last season, maybe we won't sell him because we'll see how invaluable he is. But I think another centre forward comes in, if not January, in the summer, that's going to push Wilson. And then he'll have a decision to make whether he wants to be the third striker or he wants to go somewhere else and have a couple of seasons as the main man. So I'm 7 out of 10 for Wilson. What's your score for Callum, mate?
It's kind of difficult because his goal record is again it's exceptional. I think in the Premier League this season, for his number of minutes played, he scored 7 goals in 700 minutes.
But how many games has he missed? How many games has he missed though?
He has missed a few. I'll go back to my
your casualty list, your ER waiting room. Yeah.
He's missed 14 games this season. So, again, we know this of Callum. We talked about this last season or the end of the season before. He misses probably 40% of your games.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on him. But as a substitute, as somebody who's only going to play 30 minutes a game, and will he want to do that first of all? But I'm kind of with Gary there. I think when he plays, he's a 9.
When he's fit, he's sensational. When he's fit, there's no doubt. I don't think there's many better players that leads the line. Even when Kane was in the Premier League, Wilson was right up there with Kane in terms of centre forwards in the Premier League. He really was, but he's never fit enough. That's the problem.
No, no, I think you're absolutely right in that regard. And I think what was the stat I looked at the other day? There's only Erling Haaland has a better goals per 90 minutes record than Callum Wilson this season. And that kind of says what quality Callum Wilson has. So I think right. I think when he's fit, when he's firing, when he's playing, he's a 9 out of 10 because he's the ultimate goal threat. It's just the fact that he is always on that casualty list. He's always picking up knocks. He's always going to miss 40% of your games a season, and there's only so long you can go on relying on a player like that.
That's right. Gary is right. His laugh is absolutely sensational. To be fair, he's one of them laughs that always makes you laugh. We all know somebody like that, and his character's incredible. It really is. I think after football, he's got a great career ahead of him. Punditry or podcasting, a bit like Ben Foster. I think he'll be absolutely class. I really do. But yeah, so that's us done for the kind of main bulk of the players. The bit part players is what we're moving on to now. The bit parters, as I've called them, sounds like the raggy dolls. So I'm going to kick it off with somebody who's been talked about earlier on. Sadly, he does have a foot made out of Ryvita by the sound of it, or certainly a toe made out of Ryvita, and it's Harvey Barnes. Now, we watched Harvey Barnes in pre-season, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. Pace, skill, quality, cutting inside, clinical. Scored goals, set up goals. He come off the bench against Villa, did exactly that. And we were going, fucking hell, look at this lad. Wow. We've got the better deal. Never mind Madison, kind of Spurs. We've got the better deal here. This kid's unbelievable. And we were so excited for Barnes to be in that front three with Gordon, Isak, Wilson rotating. And as you say, give Mickey that rest period, make him an impact player. And then he breaks down, sadly for Barnes, for somebody who's so clinical in a game where he probably would have scored a hat-trick in the Sheffield United game, where I think me and you could have scored if we were on the bench. He goes down with this weird toe injury, and he's out for so long, and he keeps coming back, and it's penciled in, and it goes down, and it fails. And I mean, the medical team, again, we've already talked about them. But I think this might be a bit generous, but from what we saw at Barnes pre-season and the Villa game, and just the little glimpses of him having that quality and that clinical edge for assists and goals, I gave him a 6 out of 10, and that's probably more for potential, I think. And I really do think if Harvey Barnes, when he comes back, which I hope isn't too far away, if Harvey Barnes can get back and get fit for the running of the season, I think he'll start to change a few perceptions people have made of him about him being, made of glass and shit, and what a waste of money he was. I really think he will change a few opinions. So I've gone 6 out of 10 for Barnes. Mark, what is your score for Harvey Barnes?
Kind of for the same reason as Tonali, I've given him a 5, just because we purely haven't seen enough of him at Newcastle yet, and everything that you kind of go with there is all about what he's done previously and his potential for when he comes back. And exactly the same thing as Tonali. I can't give him any higher.
Yeah,
he just hasn't played enough. So yeah, the injury is an absolute ball ache. The fact that it seems something so simple, and this happens, you get a freak injury, and it can be really harsh. I mean, Christ, was it Steve Igrusovic once missed games because he dropped a ketchup bottle on his foot or something like that? So
didn't Rio Ferdinand do his knee ligament straining for the remote control one time?
Something like that. Exactly. So shit like this happens. You get the weirdest injuries, and sometimes they're the worst ones because, and especially something like that with where it is. if it's a reoccurrence of something, sometimes you just can't see that coming. And look, he will be good. We know how consistent he can be in the Premier League, so there's no doubt there. But I can't give him any higher because we just haven't seen
because of the lack of football he's playing.
Yeah, exactly.
I do agree with Gary. I think it is a bit short-sighted to write him off already. George is saying a 6 for him and an 8 is expected. Cushy's saying 7. For me, I do think he will show people what he's all about. Williamson, you can't really score him due to negligence. I don't know if that means. Do you think he's being reckless with that toe, Williams? That one is he's got a crazy toe. The next player is Emil Kraft. We'll rattle through a couple of quick ones here because not much to really say about him. Emil Kraft, really bad injury, come back really well. Fair play to him. Kraft is quite steady. Doesn't seem to let you down whether he's playing centre half or wing back. He did really well in the cup, and then when he filled in for the league. So I'll give Kraft a 5 out of 10 just because he hasn't played a lot of games, but I do think he's good backup cover and good squad depth. I think is Emil Kraft. He's a Swedish international, doesn't let you down. What's your score for Kraft, mate?
Again, I think a 5. He's played about the same number of minutes as Harvey Barnes. He's impressed when he's come in, but again, it's really difficult to kind of judge too much on somebody that's really not played an awful lot of football.
Yeah, no, fair play. I mean, some guys are giving Kraft high scores, 8s as well. Do you know what I mean? In terms of 7s as well. 5 is too low, says Kev. That's fair play. Again, this is all about opinions. We don't ban you from making comments that are different to ours, unlike some other channels, which I won't get into. But yeah, so any difference of opinion is absolutely fine. Matty Target, I've given 4 out of 10, mainly because he's been fucked for the entire season, pretty much. Matty Target dropped off a bit from the Matty Target we had on loan since we signed him permanently. He's not been the same type of player. 4 out of 10 for me for Target. What is your score for Target, mate?
Again, I mean, it's one of those. We just haven't seen enough football from him this season. A 4 or 5 is probably fair. I just lent with the other ones. He's played the same sort of minutes. He hasn't really done anything wrong. He hasn't really done anything right. I've given him a 5.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Paul Dummett. I've given Paul Dummett a 5 out of 10. The thing about Paul Dummett is he gets thawed out of crowd status after 6 or 7 years, like Austin Powers, doesn't he? And then he seems to come and do a great job. Dummett doesn't let you down. Dummett's reliable. He's a Geordie lad. He's a local boy. I think Dummett will retire here and go into the coaching setup. I think really is what he'll probably do. I think if Dummett was going to leave, he could have left for a championship club. I think numerous times, even with his injury record. I think somebody would have took a chance on him because he's a really steady defender. He's a good leader. Comes in against City and he's brilliant. Against Man United, he's brilliant. But then Eddie's not played him. We'll get onto Eddie in a minute. He's not played him in games where he could have played him in games. Premier League experience, international experience. So I've given Dummett a 5 out of 10 again, mainly for the same reason of Kraft, really just not enough games.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I gave him a 6 just because he was so good against City and so good against Man United. I just think that the 2 games really that he started, when he's been called on, he's done a really good job.
Yeah,
and again, he was in that City game especially. I thought he was brilliant. So yeah, 6 for me for that. I can't give him any higher because he's not played minutes, but those 2 games especially, he was great.
Yeah, Dean is jumping the gun with Lewis Hall. He's not impressed with Lewis Hall at all. Yeah. Ooh, Dean, don't worry, mate. Hall is coming up. Matt Ritchie is my next one, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to go in 2-footed here, like that lad from Leicester who didn't want to play in the AFCON. Matt Ritchie is 2 out of 10 for me. I can't understand why the fuck this bloke is still in the Newcastle United squad, why he was getting picked over Louis Miley, why he's coming on instead of people like Lewis Hall. I do not get it. He's knackered. His legs have gone. He's not nowhere near impactful enough. He's not a Premier League footballer anymore. Certainly not a top 6 Premier League footballer. He's a championship player at best. He may have a great character. He may be a great person to have around the dressing room. Eddie Howe knows him and trusts him and everything else, but he is fucking finished. So 2 out of 10 for me. I don't know why he's still here. What's your score for Richie, Mark?
3. And you said about Eddie trusting him. He doesn't trust him enough to put him on the pitch when players are absolutely shattered and can't run anymore. No, yeah. I guess it seems a little bit harsh because he's kind of done the same minutes he does, and I kind of sound a bit like a hypocrite saying we've not seen enough of him. But he's really done absolutely nothing when he's come on. He's not done anything.
Yeah.
And
Apart from play on that foosball table, which everyone says, which he seems to be really good at.
so we've got Gillespie carrying the waters and Richie going for the professional foosball side. No, that's what we want to see. No, a 3 for me, just because he just has absolutely no impact whatsoever.
Yeah, I totally agree. That he just doesn't do it for me at all. People are saying if he's going to end up on the coaching staff. I think Lee says put him on the coaching staff now. Then don't make him a player. Put him on the coaching staff. And then let that position go to somebody else in the squad because he's just not good enough for me. He should have been binned off years ago. Lewis Hall, next one. We've already seen Dean score on Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall is a funny one. I feel sorry for Lewis Hall in many ways. I think you got to remember he comes from a Geordie family. He's a Newcastle fan. He's had the chance to come to, this great project and everything else, work with a great young manager, and anyhow, looked brilliant at Chelsea in the left-back berth. Yes, he was a midfielder in his youth academy. Lampard played him at left-back. He looked brilliant, getting up down the pitch, great left peg, everything else. Defensively, he's very naive. And I think that's what Eddie Howe is trying to say and convey when he's talking about him. Very naive. He gets lost in position quite a bit. If I was Eddie Howe, I would lock Lewis Hall in that fancy new cinema room we've got and just make him watch tapes of Andy Robertson for the entire fucking day. I'd order him in a Subway sandwich and some crisps and a drink and just go watch him all day, mate. And that's what you need to do. So I've generously given Lewis Hall a 5 out of 10. We've seen some potential. The goal against Manchester United, even when he coming against City, he looked bright, he looked sharp, he stuck a few tackles in, looked a bit more what's the word? Looked a bit more balanced in his play, a bit more assured of his positional senses in a defensive capacity. So I think, there is potential for Hall. He's only 18, guys. I know you're saying that's too generous, Kev. He's only 18. We're kind of writing this kid off. We're talking about how well Louis done. And that probably puts more pressure on Hall as well. But, Lewis Hall is only 18 and he's got time to turn this around and he's got time to be a good player. I don't know what Eddie thinks about him, but he keeps saying that he is going to be a Newcastle player. I think he's challenging him, Mark. He's challenging Lewis Hall to stand up and show him he wants to be this great left-back player. And it's all down to Lewis Hall. He could be what he wants to be. If he knuckles down and works on his defensive attributes, I really do think he could be our number one left-back going forward. And I think he'd be a really good player. But what's your score for Lewis Hall, mate?
Yeah, I gave him a 5, but he was great against Manchester United. I think he played well against Bournemouth as well. While everybody else sort of fell apart, I think only him and Pope really stood up. Other than that, he's not done an awful lot, has he? He's been pulled off at half time a couple of times. Cue the bots in the chat. And he's just not really done anything yet. But you're right, he's 18, a new club, new way of playing under a different manager than he's been used to. It's going to take a little bit of time for him to settle. The jury is still out on him, but I think there's definitely a little bit like we've seen with other players before. There's a player in there. I'm sure of it, and I'm sure we'll see it.
Well, see, for me, we've already made the decision to sign him. Everyone said that. He's being signed. It's an obligation to buy. It's not based on appearances. The deal is done. He is a Newcastle player next season. Everyone said that. So Eddie needs to figure out a way to get him to be the player he wants him to be. And Lewis Hall has to. I think Lewis Hall, I've said this before, he's got a crisis of identity. He thinks he's a midfielder. He's not a midfielder. He's come and centre midfield. He's looked lost. He's not a centre midfielder. When he's played left back, that's when we've seen him look half decent because he's a left back. Yeah. He's a modern day left back, getting up and down the park, but he needs to work on his defensive capabilities. I really hope Eddie can turn this play around, like he's done with Joe Linton, like he did with Miggy, like he did with Longstaff, even Lascelles and Kraft as well, to throw it in the mix. If he can do the same thing with Lewis Hall, I really think he could turn that kid into some hell of a player. And what a great achievement that would be for Eddie Howe. So moving on to the last two, Elliot Anderson's the first one. Gutted for Elliot Anderson, the Geordie Maradona that he got injured like he did. He started the season well. If anything, people are talking about him keeping Sandro Tonali out the side because he was playing so well, Anderson. Not only is he good on the ball, way better than Longstaff, much better on the ball. He's got an eye for a pass. He's got an eye for a goal. I think out of all the midfielders, Anderson's the one for me. I could see getting you 10 goals a season. Once he gets that first 1 or 2, I think they'll start to flow like wine. I really do. And I think he'll get goals because he gets in those positions. He's good in the air, and he's not scared to go back. As Kev says there, he was fantastic in America. He was great goals as well against Brighton. I think at West Ham. Was it Brighton at Chelsea or Brighton at West Ham?
Did he get one? Did he get a goal against
Villa?
Villa?
It was Villa. It was Villa. Sorry, I was thinking of the shirt.
But yeah, he looks, and we kind of touched on this at the start of the season as well. When we've had 2 pre-seasons where we've watched him and gone, yeah, this is the season.
This is the season.
And
this is the time.
Not quite happened last season, although there were flashes. And then he really started well. He had a number of games where he looked very good. Brighton game, everybody was atrocious, so we'll leave that one out. But I thought if I'm trying to remember back, Brentford he played well against. Sheffield United, everybody was pretty much a 7 or an 8 out of 10 that day anyway. I thought West Ham, I think, as well, he looked really, really good.
He started to get stuck in as well. He started to get really a bit more physical, didn't he, in midfield? And imagine if Joe Linton missing, having Elliot Anderson in the side, that physicality would be there, because he gets stuck in and smashes into people. And I really think he can. I hope he can get back fit, but I think somebody said that he's got a really bad injury. For me, I gave Elliot Anderson a 6. What was your score for Elliot Anderson, mate?
Did I give him a 6? I think I gave him a 6 as well, purely and simply because
he hasn't
not seen an awful lot. But again, a little bit like Dummett, we've seen some really good performances from him, and I think that's a fair. But again, he's another one where he's missed 19 games so far this season.
Massive, man.
And it's a huge, and it's all that midfield and missing huge chunks of games.
Yeah, it is. And that is the killer. That is the killer for Newcastle. So the last player is hopefully a player that will be back very, very soon. And my God, have we missed this player? This is not rosy retrospection. This is factual. Joe Willock. Joe Willock is such a key player for Newcastle for getting us up the pitch with his progressive running, his pace, his endeavour. He gets goals, he gets assists. When he's on the pitch, he frightens the life out of the opposition. We've missed a player like this all season in Champions League, in Premier League, in Carabao Cups. We've missed Joe Willock's energy and strength. Come back against Man U, scored a great goal. We thought he was going to be back, and then he gets another injury and he's fucked again. It's such a devastating blow for a player, still a young player as well, but such a good player. I've gave Joe Willock 7 out of 10 because the cameos I think that we saw him in, the Joe Willock that we all know, we saw that energy, that speed, that endeavour, that endless kind of amount of energy that he just exerts on the pitch. People still think Joe Willock isn't fast. I watch them; they get touch tight to him, and they think he's not fast, and he spins them, and he just goes and puts the burners on, and they can't catch him. 7 out of 10 for Joe Willock for me. What's your score for Joe Willock, mate?
If anybody ever says that and they don't think it's fast, just stick a tape on the Leicester game at the back end of the previous season.
Bruno's goal, yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable turn of pace in that. Look, I think above anybody else this season has been the biggest miss.
Yeah,
his energy in that midfield, his ability to play in the forward position on that left-hand side and come back into midfield and swap over with Joe Linton is a huge reason this season for Newcastle not being quite as effective as they were last season. He's absolutely he's rapid, but he added so much more to his game last season. And again, I'm going to be an ultimate hypocrite for this because we haven't seen enough of him this season. He's played in 6 games. He's only started 3. But I give him a 7 because the impact that he has in those games it has been big. And ultimately, we see from those games that he's played in what Newcastle are missing. So I don't think that's an unfair or an overreaction to that.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kev is jumping the gun. That is next, Kev. Don't you worry, mate. We are getting on to Mr. Howe. But again, I can't wait to see Joe Willock back, and I just want him to stay fit. I really do. He's just, I think, again, if you can get him and Barnes fit, them two, and Anderson probably thrown in the mix as well, but them two mainly, if you can get them fit and keep them fit for the rest of the season, they're match winners. They're match winners for Newcastle on that day. They really are. And we don't have a lot of them at the minute, So yeah, for me, please God, Joe Willock, get fit and stay fit, mate. We love you. Right, so that's just done for the player ratings. It's time for the manager. So we're moving on to Eddie Howe. So this is the manager's rating. What do we think that the manager has got this season in terms of his rating and our scores and a little bit of the reasons why? So for me, I'm going to kick it off. Eddie Howe for me is a 7 out of 10. I'm not Howe out at all. I don't think either one of us are on this channel. But Eddie has this season, I think, showed some of that managerial naivety. He's still a young manager. People forget that. And I think he's reminded us of that. I think his handling of the squad hasn't been great. I think in the injury crisis, I know you're probably going to say the same thing, Mark, but his handling of the squad in the injury crisis has been really poor. His insistence on playing players like Burn in games where they're going to get targeted for the lack of pace. Forrest, like we just said before, has been poor. He's persevered with players who are woefully out of form and their heads aren't right, like Kieran Trippier, making mistakes at that particular time of the season. He doesn't seem to have a plan B when the 4-3-3 high press isn't working. There's no plan B. Between him and Tyndall, two heads should be better than one. There doesn't seem to be a plan B. I love Eddie Howe and I back Eddie Howe, and I still think he can turn this round and we can have a strong finish to the season. But this has been a tough season for Eddie. This has been a season where I think, and I've seen Eddie Howe talk, and he's so articulate and he's so intelligent. He went away from Bournemouth and reinvented himself. Anyone who's watched that high performance podcast, you can't help but be impressed with the man. And I think he'll take a lot of things out of this season, the things that he hasn't quite done well, and I think he'll work on it going forward. I think he will be here next season. I really do think that. Even if we drop the mid-table, I think he'll still be here. I think he's got enough credit in the bank, but he has to learn from the mistakes in the second half of the season that he made in the first, Mark. So that's the reason I've gave him 7 out of 10, and I hope that he does do that, because if he finishes the season strong, he could be back up to an 8 or a 9. What's your score for Eddie, mate?
Give him a 6. Yeah. And Newcastle started the season so well, but there are a number of occasions where I've looked and just gone, he's made mistakes in games where subs should have been made. I've talked endlessly about.
I didn't even talk about the subs. Yeah, fucking hell.
I've talked endlessly about the PSG game where he didn't make a single substitution and players couldn't run. It was almost the same at the weekend where, there was the opportunity to make substitutions, to put fresh legs on the pitch. Doesn't matter who they are, they're fresh legs. And City were allowed to get back in the game effectively because Newcastle run out of energy. And stopped being able to kind of get the ball forward and keep the ball away from their own goal. Nottingham Forest, the inability to see what everybody else could see in terms of the Dan Burn, Anthony Elanga issue. That screamed from minute one that was a problem, and it took too long to put right. The lack of substitutions against Everton at 3-0 down, when players are shattered and there's absolutely no chance of getting back into the game. I genuinely think that he should have just dumped 5 new subs on and just gone, have a rest. There's no way we're getting back into this. So that there are mistakes in that regard. I think there's been a few mistakes in terms of starting personnel and the not pulling people when they should have been pulled, that sort of thing. It's not been last season by a country mile. He is absolutely hampered by injuries this season. I'll bring up my sheet one more time, and just focus on that list. I know. Focus on that list on the right hand side. And look at the number of players that have missed 10+ games.
Oh, mate, that's unbelievable. I've never known anything like it in a senior squad. I've never known anything like it, mate. It's unbelievable.
And for me, it's the total number of games lost from those players, and it's just, how can you? And this sort of goes against my score of a 6, but it's the managing of the squad where he is short-handed. 209 games across those 18 players. It's unbelievable the poor luck really Newcastle have had with injuries this season. And look, this is probably, with everybody and all that, as bad as it gets in terms of injuries. if they're making changes in personnel in the background in terms of the fitness and the physio team and that sort of thing, that can only be a good thing going forward. These players will come back and will hopefully stay fit for longer for you. But he just, I think, a little bit of mismanagement this season in terms of the way that Newcastle have gone about it and the lack of really learning quickly in games, the lack of substitutions early or at all, or the inability to change things when tactically he's been sort of found out in games. And that's not a slight against him at all the time. But I think at times you need to have a plan B. You need to have another option to go to when plan A isn't working. That the one on that I'd always look at is Pardew. When Pardew's 4-3-3 didn't work, he didn't have anything else. He stumbled into that through sheer fluke, and I'm convinced of that. He didn't know what he was doing when he put those players out in the field with Cisse and Barr and Ben Arfa, but it worked 90% of the time. The 10% it didn't work, he didn't have a clue what to do to change it.
So, sorry, I was getting the Anchorman flashbacks there when you said it was working 90% of the time. I was just thinking of that cologne there for a minute, mate. Sorry, you made a serious point. We're getting scored as well in the comments, mate. So 66 has said, Mark 7, Chris A. We would require you to, I was going to say, we would require you to return your subscriber prize, 66. I'm only joking. Ian has said we'll both get 10 out of 10. And Kevin's given us 20 out of 10. Top lad, Kev. Top lad. Really appreciate that. It's nice to be scored as well, guys. Nice to be scored. What's this here? George is saying this channel has been a 9. Only one thing wrong. Where's the cat? Exactly. Where's the cat? I think he's having a shit, isn't he? That was the scraping noise before.
He is fast asleep again. He's started to tire himself out now. So he tends, when I come in and sit down, he comes and sits under the the desk here in his bed. So he's calmed down an awful lot now. So
my cat, my cats are just fast asleep and lazy bastards, which is great because they would be causing even more carnage than your cat would. So just before we finish up, just on the Eddie Howe point. I think people are talking about it in the comments already. You know, I think William's saying Jose is a hell no for him. The media is going to perpetually link us now. Jose Mourinho is obviously out of employment. Should Eddie be concerned about that internally? Do you think if we continue to struggle? I mean, obviously Eddie wins games, that all goes away. That's it. That the noise goes away. Simple as that. But if we continue to do what we've been doing, is that a concern, Freddie? An experienced, proven winner. Now, forget everything else about Mourinho. He's a proven winner. He's just been sacked from Roma with a 49% win ratio, which is the lowest of his entire career. That tells you how good of a manager Jose Mourinho is at winning football games and trophies. And not to mention, and I'm not advocating Jose for the job, by the way. I'm just saying this are facts. These are facts. He went to Roma and hadn't been in a cup final for something like 20 years or 15 years or something like that. He won them a trophy and got them 2 cup finals in his time there. So he is not a shit manager. You know, people say he's a shit manager. He's not a shit manager. But I do feel his time in the Premier League is done personally. But do you think Eddie should be worried about Jose lurking in the background?
Not about Jose. No. I think there was a time for Jose, and I think he's done a really good job at Roma. And you're absolutely right. There is that, and the sentiment there with the Bobby link.
Yeah, of course it is.
I don't think Jose is evolved enough around the modern Premier League game. I think that's why he didn't particularly work at Spurs or at Manchester United. But let's not forget, he won a trophy with Manchester United and was.
He did.
He finished second in the league that season.
He did. He actually said that was his biggest achievement. That was him having a dig at how much of a bunch of wankers the Man United players were, except for Ibrahimovic. Probably was the only one that was half decent.
But yeah, and Spurs, he got into a cup final.
He would have won that. I think he would have won that if they hadn't sacked him. I think he would have won that cup for him. I really do.
And I think he's maybe a victim of the TV thing in that regard, that it was all on show and stuff. But he's not a bad manager. He hasn't suddenly become a bad manager. But I just think he hasn't quite evolved with the way that the Premier League has gone. I don't think Eddie needs to be worried about him. And you're right, Eddie wins 5 of his next 6 games, and all the talk disappears massively.
So I've just seen a comment there from Dean. I'm going to get that in a minute. Chelsea fans would always want Mourinho back, I think, just because he's got that kind of affinity to the club. I think Mourinho is destined for either the Portugal job or Saudi. Personally, I think that's where he'll end up.
England? Would the FA bring him in as England manager?
But do they go down that foreign route again? You know, do they do that again? They didn't seem to want to do that after.
No, but
Sven
he's got history in England. He speaks the language. He understands English football. He has that history in the Premier League. He's won plenty of stuff here. The difference, I think, with the others is they'd never managed here. They'd never really been to the country. Sven spoke wonderful English. And that story is just it's heartbreaking for me. I love Sven. I know he probably should have done better as an England manager, but I love him. That's horrible. And I know it's not a Liverpool podcast, but I really hope he is able to manage that Legends team.
He probably will
have that wish. Yeah. That would be awesome.
He probably will, but just, you know, it is very sad, but just to bring it up a couple of notches, this is a great comment from Dean. Can we rate the Sky and a TNT commentary? I'm going to start with this. Sky -1. Sky -1. That Pete Drury is fucking Pete Dreary. He makes me long for Martin Tyler and his top 4 wanking off for 90 minutes. That guy is an absolute fucking wank. I know you like him, but he's fucking abysmal. That game against Liverpool was fucking disgraceful.
Before he got the Sky gig, I actually thought he was pretty good. And it makes me long for them to bring in bloody Sam Matterface. That's how much he's been awful. And he's awful.
The only good thing about BT is Ali McCoist. Ali McCoist is the best commentator in the game. He's absolutely brilliant. But the rest of them are shit.
I'm trying to think. Sky commentators, the guy that does the Championship, whose name completely escapes me. He's exceptional. I can't remember his name. Fuck. I'll find it later. Anyway, he's great.
We're not getting in a hurry, and I'm not getting bored. I'm not getting banned. Absolutely not. Yeah, but no, you're right. It's I mean, the pundits are awful. That's why most people watch fan-led media these days, because let's be honest with you, it's more fun, isn't it? You know, we always say that the lads at Toon Review do great match commentary for Newcastle games, so watch them and don't listen to those wankers on Sky TNT. So I think that's us pretty much done, mate. We've done nearly an hour and a quarter on the scores. Thank you so much, everybody who's been in the comments. We really appreciate that. It always helps the show flow. Yeah, good to see you too, Dean, as well. Thank you, mate, for all your comments and everything else as well. We've enjoyed this. I think it's been quite honest. We haven't lied or overinflated anybody's score. I think it's been pretty much similar in amongst all the comments for the players. We all want the team to pick up and do a better job in the second half of the season, get players back from injury, maybe get a sign or two. And Mark and I will do our very best to bring you any rumour has it going, if there actually is any. In the coming days, I'm sure. But hopefully, you know, that's the last kind of week and a half of the season. Of the window. There'll be a few more players coming in as well. And as Lee says, yes, don't forget the thumbs up, guys. If you can like the channel, please. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'd like to get that 7,000 as quick as we can as well. We've got a great price for 7,000. I'm just waiting to get it all firmed up. But it's an absolute belter and a must-have for a Newcastle fan. So yeah, make sure you're in it to win it on that one. We'll be back with a match preview for the Fulham game coming up as well, and obviously the Villa game soon enough. And until then, everybody, have a cracking evening, and we'll catch you in the next Evermore.
Take care, guys.